Hi, you've tuned in to Ask Dr. Kat, and I'm Dr. Katherine Williams. We have here tonight Giuliani Kotikela, co-founder and CEO of Chikeey, a disruptive startup looking to innovate the mental health field by bringing advanced digital technology to evidence-based treatments. Welcome, Giuliani.
Hi, guys. Hi, Dr. Kat. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, welcome. And can we call you Jules on the show?
Please do.
All right. And then, of course, Dr. Lisa Black, returning for season 3, lead psychologist of biofeedback and neurofeedback services at UCSD Family Medicine. Welcome back, Lisa.
Thanks, guys.
And then, of course, all of you remember Amanda Caniglia. Amanda, you want to introduce yourself to those who may be new to our season?
Yes, thank you all for joining. Once again, we're back with Bellevue TV. This is season 3. We started last year. We launched in April of 2020. Little did we know we'd still be coming together virtually for this social club platform. But it has been amazing. One of the things we love is to just share the stories of amazing people and great minds that frequent Bella Vista. And it is an absolute pleasure to welcome you today, Jules, and find out really just what was the inspiration behind this new technology and this new product that is so important, especially for kids. You know, they're going through so much today. I have a son, he's upstairs right now, homeschooling or online schooling, right? And they are going through emotional roller coasters. So if you could talk about what inspired you to create this new product, and it seems like it's not only for kids, but for kids of all ages, adults too.
Oh, Amanda, you're right. In my previous life, I was in management consulting for almost a decade, and doing a good amount of travel all across the U.S. And I had started actually my first startup there. I worked for Deloitte Consulting, and having these conversations. I have 2 girls. And having conversations with them every night while on the road, it was really important to me to kind of keep that, emotional bond, but also understand, like, how are they doing? And when I would get that read on them, everything was always fine. How was your day? What did you learn? The usual. And it really turned out is that fine for my daughter was synonymous with I'm not fine. And that was indicative by her teacher calling me up for a parent-teacher conference and intervention due to some issues she was having with a girl in another classroom. And I started to look at and try to understand, like, how did that come about, and what I realized is that children, in addition to adults, but we all have problems with really articulating how we feel at any given point in time. And more than that, if we could, even as parents, but beyond just being a parent, understand the people, places, and things that affect us emotionally throughout our day, we could then make informed decisions or choices versus being victim to, not having that type of information accessible to us. And so that's where the birth of Chikeey started, and really on our quest to really disrupt the whole, emotional management and monitoring of your emotional state in real time.
Yeah, and actually, one of the things that I used to do in treatment was we would monitor mood by paper and pencil. I mean, really, it was truly paper and pencil. And of course, the usual issues that come up, like they would lose their paper, because they also had ADHD along with it, or they were, had difficulty concentrating from depression or anxiety. And so the therapy homework wouldn't come back, right?
Or if you think about it, right? So what happens if you're on the way to therapy before you're filling this form out and you get into a car accident? All of a sudden, how was your day, right? I mean, so everything else is skewed based on these different, like, your environmental stimuli that really come through. And so to really remove that at point in time bias in the surveys and so forth, it really required having a passive monitoring capability that was really seamless to the end user. And that's kind of what we really wanted to incorporate as well, is to address some of those other pitfalls and challenges I think are out there, like Dr. Kat, that you just described as well.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what I was feeling 2 hours ago.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, this morning.
That's exactly why I do bio and neurofeedback, right? It's built-in feedback. And was running across the same issues in clinic of how are you feeling? So I wouldn't even have people do paper and pencil because they would never do it, especially adults, right? At least kids, maybe there's like a threat of parent or something like that over their shoulder, but adults just didn't. So it would be like, how do you feel? And all of their cognitive biases would come in the moment. Well, that week was good, it wasn't good. And then you'd have to do all of those challenges. And I found that with both biofeedback and neurofeedback, or really any wearable, you get it in the moment, right? Yes. Right now, in the moment, what's going on, there's feedback. You can go, how do I feel? Like if your watch, especially, I know like the iWatch right now goes breathe, if someone can look and go, oh, yeah, I was holding my breath, I do feel stressed. And that's what makes me so excited about Jules's product is, wow, this gives you way more than just like the breathe icon on your watch. It really allows us to dive into the in moment and make you more aware, kind of like your therapist was sitting there on your shoulder, giving you that feedback. That's so great and fantastic.
And that's what I think what we're really excited about is being able to work to really hyper-personalize, actual treatments. At the end of the day, that's what our ultimate kind of goal is here. When we think about it as one option, one thing that people can get from it is now, it's not just about yourself, but you could also, use this in a treatment setting to where your therapist or clinician can modify or augment the treatment that you're receiving to better suit your needs, wants, and desires. I mean, how much better is that? It's really, that to me is the ultimate point of where we want to get, but also making this available to just everybody, whether they're in treatment or not. Half of, patients that suffer from mental illness don't seek any treatment.
Right.
Or they self-medicate, right? So we really want this to be available for a large group of people that, still need help, but maybe aren't at the point where they're seeking that out actively on their own.
So Jules, I just realized that the majority of the public doesn't know what we're talking about and what your device actually does. I'm like, I'm over here, like, I know exactly what you're talking about, but maybe can we get a little short snippet of, what the device does?
So basically we have a smart wearable ring, and what that ring actually measures. So think about your speech, your galvanized skin response. So think about your sweat, your heart rate variability. You've got your body temperature and your SpO2, all of those different things combined. When we think about like sensor fusion, because we're collecting all of these signals simultaneously, and we're using these different signals at the same time to determine or ascertain how you're feeling at any given point in time, right? So what's the best for you? So sometimes the sweat on your, out of fear might not be actually that. It might be an excitement or anticipation if you're at, like Disneyland or something. So it's understanding that with the contextual awareness of where you are, in addition to that, to understand your emotional state. But then also we offer the ability with our app to change your current state. So let's say you're sad, but you want to be content, right? So that's definitely a larger move. And how do you get from, your baseline, which is point A? Everybody has their own baseline. And it's really to understand in the movement what it takes for you, and let's say the intensity of the different options to get you from point A to point B. So we do have the ring that actually projects different colors, and you don't have to have the actual color palette on, because some people don't like to wear their feelings on, let's say, the cuff of their sleeve, right? If you go into a meeting, you don't want to show that it's red. Some things like that could be a little bit more harmful, but so that's why it's connected with your app real time, so that you can always glance at your app to understand, what's going on. But also we have that same alerting, notification for when you have those emotional swings, or when things start actually getting above or below your threshold, let's say like 98% of what your normal baseline is for that given area. Then you can start notifying either others, friends, family, your community, your tribe. Also, it could just notify yourself, right? So, hey, we see that something's going on, is this what you want to actually happen right now, right? If you're going skydiving, it's going to go off the charts, right? You don't want something to shoot text to everybody you know.
Jules, one of the things that is just so exciting to me about this is that it's not a product, it's technology, it's advanced technology. It's the future of mental health treatment.
It is, I have to say with COVID and it's really spurred along also so much advancement from telehealth and the way that people are now receiving treatment. And I really feel that wearables has kind of gone part and parcel into that as well, because people are not able to be in person any longer. And so there had to be, the technologies that were coming up, I think they have been adopted now much quicker across the board than previously expected, which has been a wonderful, outcome in a terrible environment.
Right.
There was a huge digital push. I think all industries, I know because I come from the restaurant industry, but also seeing how like a restaurant that is so personable like medicine and had to get that digital push in order to survive and adapt. We talk about, being agile and how necessary that is in the virtual technology.
I think that I'm so happy that I'm seeing this come forward, that this digital push is happening, because child psychologists everywhere have been yelling for the last 7 years, to the industry, to the field. Look, the kids are coming in, they're already on it. They know, they're born, they're digital natives. And the therapists are trying to play catch up, to like, wait, okay. And I remember at one point, and you're going to laugh at this, but at one point, I don't know, a number of years ago, I'm like, okay, I cannot use paper and pencil. It's just not working. They carry their smartphone everywhere with them. So I'm going to have them. And this is before all the apps exploded in the field. So I started having them document or keep track of their moods using like the Notes app.
Yes. I think that software has really definitely taken off, but it's reached a point to where it's very, I say, oversaturated. Mm-hmm. And I really feel that it's done a really great first step, but the first step has not really been preventative care. I really feel that, anecdotally writing down, let me give you an example. I went to the doctor probably like a year ago. This is before all the COVID stuff and everything. And I swear, but I thought I was dying. And so the doctor asked me when triage, okay, so from, 0 to 10, what is your pain? Like, what is your level? And I said 9. And he goes, Jules, 9 is labor. And I said, oh, then I'm like a 4. Right? You have to level set. And the truth is that in the moment, I would have put 9, like everywhere. And then when, you kind of look back at, okay, well, how do you determine those levels and what does it really mean? People just don't remember those types of things at any given point in time. So I just really wanted to remove a lot of that so that, you take the in-person, bias out of the whole equation. Right. So now I'm not asking you, how do you feel? Because I know how you feel. Right. You have an elevate, like there's 6 different characteristics, right? I could see that these different things are meaning, place you into different categories. Now, I think the devil in the details is what's happiness to you versus happiness to me, and so forth. People have different levels in which they read, right? Different types of those baseline levels, which I was referring to earlier. So it's having that hyper-personalized experience, but that's for everybody, right? Because your wearables already, once you baseline, it's running off of that and it's getting smarter and it's learning more and it's doing everything else based on the wearer. So if you say, okay, Jules, can you switch rings and like go give it to your daughter? And no, I could, but it would monkey up all of, the algorithms and the suggestions would be often weird, probably sending me to McDonald's or something.
Oh, Amanda, I was thinking about your son, and when you ask him, like, how are you feeling? What you might get back, especially for preteens, it would be so different from the accuracy that you would get from wearable technology.
Yeah, I think I'm starting because my son is 11 going on 12. Luckily, we have really good open communication because he he does do counseling. I sought counseling during COVID because I wanted to be ahead of the curve and have him have the communication tools to be able to, get through this pandemic in a healthy way. But I do notice that the answers are getting shorter and shorter and shorter as he, starts to become cooler and cooler and cooler and more independent. And I think that's just expected and typical of kids their age. So absolutely, some of the things that he's asked to do before going into that counseling session are to do those intake sheets, and say, okay, this is how I'm feeling right now, so on and so forth. But I think what tremendous insight that we could gather. 1 second.
The cat.
Hold right there.
That would be a number 2, right? Child number 2 over there.
How did he get out?
Lisa, one of the other things I was going to ask you about is, literally one of my teens, male teen clients, asked me when we were talking about treatment goals, and he said, because he's highly anxious and he gets panic attacks, and he's also has social anxiety, and he said, I just really want to know when I'm about to get anxious. So how can I know, I need to know, like, what are the warning signs, or, before I'm just in a full blown, panic attack or anxiety attack. And so I think that's where this sort of awareness, potential biofeedback, and knowing what kind of red flags that are happening in your body so that you can be aware of what's going on before you're at that number 10. Where are you at number 2 or 3 or 4? Can you talk a little bit about that? Because that's a big part of what you do.
Absolutely. So it's my head spinning, a very simple answer that has to do with more wearables is just heart rate, right? And maybe some GSR of like, where's your heart rate at? How fast is it going? I mean, I know it sounds like so simple, but is your heart rate up? Is your blood pressure up? Are your hands sweating? This shows that you're in the sympathetic nervous system, right? That state. And I think a lot of individuals, especially children, but I know plenty of adults that haven't been taught like the basic sympathetic versus parasympathetic nervous systems. And if we're in that nervous system and we know we're in that nervous system, will we get a panic attack? No, not necessarily, but is that the early warning signs? 100%, right? I'm in this system. It's now triggered. Let me get back in my parasympathetic nervous system, get myself a little bit more calm. And something as simple as a wearable can absolutely do that. But if we break it down a little bit more into the details of thought processes and things like that unfortunately isn't something a wearable can tell us quite yet, but I do think is an excellent thing that can start to give us the feedback so we learn it, right? Like, oh, in that moment, my sympathetic nervous system was triggered. What happened right before that? Right. And we get a little bit of time to think about what happened in our day. What were our thoughts? And if, of course, we have an amazing individual of mom, dad, therapist that asks us those questions, what thoughts occurred before your heart rate started increasing or before you got on stage or something like this, we can start narrowing down the things that trigger our sympathetic nervous system, as well as what things trigger our parasympathetic nervous system, like breathing and thought challenges and all of those, other things that come with years of therapy, but could be so quickened if we catch it in the moment, right? Like, there it is. And we can catch it. And I have those beautiful moments in therapy, in my therapy sessions, because they're hooked to the equipment and I'll trigger them. One of my favorites is I'll look at them and say, and Dr. Gebert's taught me this one, I know a secret. Your medical doctor told me a secret about you, which is so mean, right? But like,
from Ghostbusters,
right? And it immediately, you see the heart rate go up and everything go up. And of course, I don't know a secret, but then we have a good laugh about it, right? Like, you thought I knew your deepest, darkest, dirtiest secret there that, you didn't want me to know. That was one thought. And see what happened in the equipment. So I can teach that in the moment. But if we can catch that in real life, that's, invaluable.
that would be my big ask. I mean, how amazing would it be for going back to my teen client, if in the moment as he's going to his, daily, school routine, and there's a wearable technology device that tells him, hey, you're starting to get anxious. And he could stop and say, okay, what's going through my mind right now? What thought am I having right now? Jules?
And that's definitely completely doable, right? And even from a hindsight perspective, with the ability, because we have the location data as well, we can understand, where they were when these different types of episodes happen. So for my daughter, it's 1234, and the address is the school, right? So obviously I can kind of think through, okay, she might be at recess or lunch, and some things happened at that point in time. But everything now with having the location data, you can really understand where the person was and what were these things that were taking place. Now, does it say that, you were drinking coffee, or does it, specifically? No, you do have the ability to add that type of insight into it, but it does understand where you're at. And so from some of the common, some deductive reasoning, you can kind of ascertain what were you doing at that given point in time. I think it gives you a little bit clearer of a picture when you're looking at kind of hindsight, like what were those different triggers or events, or even looking, longer term, when you set goals for yourself, or what are the things that actually lift you up? What are the things that kind of take you down, tear you down, or dip your bucket or fill your bucket? Those types of things are, we can understand if you're, exercising, walking, doing yoga, mindfulness, all of these different things we do actually capture, right? Now, very specific places, Starbucks, it can understand that I'm happy when I go there in the morning, but it doesn't know that I'm drinking, a venti Americano with almond milk.
That's the amazing part of AI, right? Is as AI gets more and more, and we get to teach it things,
yes,
the more specialized it gets. And for us, it will be our teacher and our specialized feedback, but we have to train it. And there's a little bit of, training and learning that's involved with that.
There's a good amount of that, but we also want to include a sense of novelty, right? So, the things that we remember the most are typically not the things that we do every day. If you think back, like, it's the path like least taken that you really remember and recall the most. And we've incorporated that type of thinking actually into our app specifically to allow people to, when we think about different suggestions or recommendations to take a person, to whatever state they're looking to get to, what are the things that they typically do? What are things that they never do? And where's a complete white space? So let me give you an example. When I come to San Diego, I love to eat at Phil's Barbecue. Okay. And now that totally makes me happy. But let's say flying in, and it knows that I'm in San Diego, based on my history that I'm always there, we have all this information that's completely not a problem. It might give me a second offering of, hey, why don't you go to the barbecue pit? It's closer and it has greater, alignment potentially with your wants and needs. Or it might say something completely different and say, what about going for Korean barbecue? Right. So something that's a completely a little bit more of white space where you're pushing the envelope to kind of create new experiences for the individual to, kind of cultivate just that newness and trying new things out. Now, if they don't want to, no harm, no foul. We're, definitely creatures of habit, but it's there to kind of start putting in that thought, right? It's kind of trying to spread your wings a little bit more and to push those boundaries in which we're so comfortable in. I don't want to say a rut, but it's a fine line.
And actually, to generalize that over to the therapy field, that would be like in anxiety, we do exposures, what's called exposures. So you're exposing yourself to things that may be potentially anxious. So I can see that this would be kind of giving ideas of, what about walking over to that group of kids over there? Or how about trying, whatever activity it might be after school? Just kind of try to push, give them that extra push.
And you have to do that in a gamified way, right? So I think it's really awesome and people want to be incentivized. So what we actually have is something we call karma points. And a thing in which I do this is instead of interacting with people like via text or something, it's like you get extra karma points if you actually call them. You get extra karma points, even more than that, if you interact with them in person, right? Yeah. Because all of these things, sometimes it is that connection, that human connection that we want and need so badly, right? And how do we kind of facilitate that and drive that? And then also for, doing things like for giving, you always feel better when you give versus receiving. So, doing something just unexpected, I call them random acts of kindness, where throughout your day, if you, do some of these different little activities, like, it could be something like I say, compliments are free, but nobody ever gives them, right? Or you could do like an easy example that everybody kind of would understand is paying for the person behind you at Starbucks. I love that. I've never been that person, but I've always loved. Or high-fiving, somebody, like just, like certain things, of which not, of course, all of these that we could actually do right now, but I just think about these different types of ways that you can drive that, just people to really look at what makes you tick and what makes your body change and how you feel.
I love that term, gamify, because it's really, therapy can be very kind of old and buddy-duddy and traditional, and especially for someone who works with kids and teenagers and college students. I mean, really, like gamifying therapy as much as you can in an evidence-based approach. That would be like my Mother's Day ask.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and we can do, it's how do we incorporate, you have to understand like the whole journey map and the age group. So the persona, what we say is like the representative individual of who's using that app or, the features or functionality, and how would they use it? What are the pain points that they really feel? And how does this really address or alleviate those? So going throughout their day, what are some of the things that they hate about paper and pencil or about traditional apps that might be there to provide some of these things? Why are they not using them? So what are those kind of sticking areas? And then we want to drive engagement. So I know previously when I said, we want that passive engagement with a wearable, but that coupled with active engagement with the app is really what brings everything kind of that full 360 view of what a person or a patient looks like, right? So it's not the one and done. It's the two together that really provide those capabilities.
Just to change the topic just a little bit, different direction. I should mention that, Jules, I got to know you through a mutual colleague, and since then, when we talked about your ideas for bringing digital technology, advanced technology, which I know nothing about really. I don't even really know how to use all the features on my smartphone. It's something that I do know something about, mental health. And so we are collaborating along with Dr. Black, which is why we're kind of all here today on this technology and kind of bringing it to what really is a burgeoning, really a mental health crisis right now, especially with the pandemic. It's kind of speeding that along with lots and lots of individuals with anxiety, depression that have been, skyrocketing or, gradually increasing, but now over the past almost 2 decades to record high levels as of last year. And so there's a big need here. And I'm just curious, could you tell the audience about how how did you come about, in terms of your background, where you started in technology to kind of, where you are now?
So it's kind of funny. So I originally actually started in logistics as an industrial engineer, writing the algorithms for UPS, like mail trucks. So how could you identify with the housing boom and crisis and whatnot? It changed a lot of the routes in terms of what houses were actually where, all these new streets and so forth. And so shipping, think about the packages and whatnot. How do they get from point A to point B? And so basically we would write the different algorithms that would ensure that the packages per truck were a level amount that could be done and dealt from a 9 to 5 type of job. So that started my kind of love for numbers. And from there I went into systems design and development. Originally I'd worked for a multi-family housing company, and I was doing their financial reporting and whatnot. And they had to build actually a whole financial system that for the whole corporation, countrywide. my boss at the time, she was a wonderful woman. She said, oh, we can build it. I was like, okay. So I went with her. We just actually designed it from the ground up, everything. And actually, we won awards for having the most innovative solution from IBM for 2 years running. I had no idea what the enormity of what we had done, but we were just like, okay, we're going to do this. And she and I, and then 2 others, we did that. It was really great. And then I worked actually with Qualcomm and doing financial systems and system design and development for their sourcing, so front end, back end, all of that. And then Deloitte came to me to come build systems actually for the military. So I've been in, development, AI, machine learning, and my degrees in mathematics, as well. So all of that has been my whole life. But then it kind of turned a little bit more on its head into more of the strategy and the insight that comes from having all of these different capabilities, right? So just having, machine learning or artificial intelligence by itself, so what does that mean? Why does somebody care? And it's that additional insight that you have to understand of what's the problem that you're trying to address, and what would that enable you to do? So really kind of working around that and then understanding what does good look like from different corporation standpoint and view, and then looking at those, key drivers. So if you're trying to increase profitability for an organization, what are the different levers that you have to change or modify, not reduce costs, but actually profitability? And let's say that you'd have to either add a new product line or, increase your market share. There's only so many different ways that you can do these different things. And, using all of the kind of background and with consulting and everything else, has just played such a, gave me a very different view, I think, from being very hands-on to the strategic focus. And then how do you actually design or develop something that's not only practical, but plausible and valuable? I think that's a very big difference. Of it's not just having a good idea, but it's something that is a need that's not being met. And how do you commercialize that and be able to take that to market?
Sounds like your children really helped inspire, and you saw business is about there's a need, and then you find a solution for that need. And do you feel creating this company, launching this company, do you have a lot of fulfillment? Do you feel that not your work is done, but you're on the right path? And I always say that life has all these different puzzle pieces, and then all of a sudden they come together and they click. Do you feel that
Yes.
Starting the company was your puzzle pieces coming together and clicking?
It was another puzzle piece. So originally, actually, I started an incubator outside of my existing company because I had so many different ideas that I wanted to do. So I have a cork board of all these different things that I want to start up, spin off, and that they go through my head. And so I keep them there, and they're just there. But that's, I always had started my main company outside was called Monsoon Design Studios. Monsoon Design, because, the weather you can't control. It's a force to be reckoned with. And so I had, 6 to 10 different things at any given point in time, and they change around sometimes. But, the first one that we were spinning off as our child was Chikeey. And that to me was, it's just one aspect. Now, as we build out Chikeey, we definitely think about that comprehensive look and feel of an entire patient's health, right? So right now it's with a ring, but, I'm taking a look at glasses as well to understand and actually do true biofeedback. So EEG type of readings and whatnot. How can we integrate our type of technology in alternate form factors?
So it amazes me because you have your brain, you have both sides, right? And you have that entrepreneurial spirit. So I'm admiring and I'm in awe because you can do all those, crunch the numbers, but then you also have this real creative side.
You
right?
can't be afraid to roll up your sleeves.
Pardon?
When starting a new company, not everybody gets your the design, your thoughts, your vision necessarily. And so I have to say, like 95% of even having other people come in and work with me, like just on a brand, the logo, writing this, I mean, you will still end up doing about 80, 95% of all of it. And it's because you have a vision in your head already that you want. And once you get something up and going, it's easy to modify or change things down the line. But as long as you have something that you're comfortable in, you feel good with at the bat, that's a great starting point, And again, but I can't stress I was talking with somebody about, innovation. And I said, innovation for the sake of innovation is just boring. You have to, really understand the market landscape and what's the need now? What's it going to be in 5 years, in 10 years? Why hasn't somebody already done this? Right? And then how do you do it? Right? Software is simple. I just feel like hindsight's 2020. Software is simple. Hardware, it takes it to a whole nother level. And I think that, that whole thing around minimum viable product, what does that look like in terms of design and development in short sprint cycles? And then actually forming those relationships with your suppliers, right? It's one thing, like when the pandemic hit, now, one of the parts that we need, we have 94 components on our ring, 94, front and back side. That's a lot. And most are about the size of a pin drop, right? So this is extremely detailed work. And one of the parts that we needed, the pad size, was out of stock for 7 months because of the run on iPads and all the stuff for schools and learning and personal use in the pandemic. So this stuff you can't make up. Right. So now all of a sudden you went from having a supply chain to having everything completely disrupted. I had to move the supply chain from China and Taiwan to the US and Canada. I mean, it's just been, things, luckily being as small as we are actually gives us the ability to pivot and make these quick changes versus large organizations. If this would happen, you're like, what do you do? You're really impacted in a much different way. So luckily we were able to definitely course correct, and we had we had plan B and C. We just didn't think we'd ever have to use it. At least I didn't until that one day.
Wow. Well, this time has come up so quickly. We could, talk for much, much longer with all of these ideas. And Jules, I have a feeling that you'll be back, right, Amanda, with your newer ideas as they come along.
I'm like already like, who can I connect her with? And I'm already thinking, yeah. I mean, UCSD Health and the new School of Compassion and Empathy that Denny Stanford, is a huge part of, and Dr. Brenner over with the health sciences.
And I'd love to make sure is also that, when we think about mental health, we're thinking of the patients, but I think we need to take a look at the physician burnout, right? Going back to that, it's a very easy, calculatable, ROI, and also it's being good to yourself, right? I think that we just, giving the doctor's oath, right? It's just always so patient focused and forward that sometimes we neglect ourselves.
Right. And that's where I see a lot of collaboration possibly happening. And that's the magic. That's what happens on Bellevue TV, right? We get to learn about you, but then somehow we also see how collaborations happen and who we can introduce each other to, so that we keep just doing good, for the community and then the world at large.
Exactly.
I have a question now that my kitten hasn't entered stage right. I was wondering, as a mom, what if I'm completely new to this product, how would you introduce this product to me? Right? I look at it, I go, oh, it's a Chikeey, it's a mood ring. How do I explain this? Is this a product, or is this a technology that I'm going to purchase? Where do I find it? And am I giving it to my son? How does that work? Or are you targeting more the hospitals? Are you targeting professionals for them to use it with their patients? How does
that? There's a couple different ways, right? So when you think about, direct to consumer route is definitely a huge one for us. Like UCSD doesn't actually support necessarily one or promote solely one product. So it's on a range of, different preferred vendors. But I think that something that would be also interesting that we've been working with different organizations is being allowed to use their fitness subsidy. So B2B2C, where people can then offset by making a wellness purchase, and then it's not costing them out of their own pocket. So there's a couple of different routes with that, but definitely D2C is one that is readily available. And, I always say, like, if you don't know your ring size, actually in the app, we have the feature and functionality to determine your size real time. And you can place the order through that.
So cool.
And I think that definitely it would be great to go part and parcel with therapists as well, in terms of, as long as they're following, the specified protocol, and that this goes hand in hand with that. I think that would be great.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really, we talked about the evidence-based approach, Jules, and that's really what our collaboration is here.
Yeah. Right.
With, I'm in psychiatry and Dr. Black is in family medicine, but the neurofeedback and biofeedback program, and, looking at, what the ring can do, and how can it help to address these, this truly, again, mental health crisis that is coming up to a head here.
If at worst, it at least opens the aperture to have an honest, open discussion, right? Where, we wear many masks sometimes, and sometimes, we're so busy going 100 miles per hour, maybe we're not in tune or asking the right questions, or I don't know. I look at that sometimes like, am I a bad parent for not realizing this, for not knowing this? And then I try to take a step back, and I'm like, it's not all about me. But, at least giving that opening to be like, hey, like, I saw something happened at lunch, like, how's lunch today? Or, how's everything going? And just listening, right? And there's different techniques for listening and having those discussions anyways, especially with kids in the evening time, like usually before naps or bedtime. They're very open to have a little bit more of these vulnerable types of conversations.
Well, to that end, more open conversations is what I hope we'll continue having, and we're certainly going to have that on the rest of the season of Ask Dr. Kat. So please join in again. Jules, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, ladies, for having me.
Yeah, and Dr. Lisa Black, thank you for returning.
Yes, for having me.
Amanda?
All right. Thank you guys so much. Dr. Kat, as always, you're a rock star. And we're always appreciative for the time and energy. We know that life is crazy. Life is a roller coaster, but we just truly, truly enjoy having amazing guests. And I'm also excited because it's three strong women, right? Accomplished women here on the show tonight. So I also have to recognize that. So thank you for your time, ladies, so much, and for being part of the Bellevue community. And let's see what comes out of this conversation and these connections.
All right. Awesome. Thanks, ladies.
Thank you.